All right. I am Tyler Morrison again, and I'm going to be discussing a project I began in May of 2015, developing some communication tools to advance a new monitoring strategy with BLM. I'm going to walk you through development of the communication plan and some additional communication materials, and then kind of get into successes and less than successes and what the future has for the project and myself. The overarching goal or purpose of this project was to enhance awareness and understanding the benefits of this strategy. And real quick, I also want to welcome Bailey Foster, who works at the National Operations Center. She's not my community sponsor, but has been very supportive and providing me a lot of feedback, so thanks for attending, Bailey. So, start with, what the heck is this AIM thing? So also another endless acronym of BLM, but it's also a new monitoring strategy. BLM manages 245 million acres for multiple uses for future generations. And to manage this properly, they need really good, reliable data on a site-specific scale for understanding resource condition, on a larger scale, more regional scale for understanding changes over time and space, and then also on a national scale for policy development and implementation. Previous monitoring frameworks have really mostly just got at the site scale, maybe going out to a grazing allotment and picking a non-random place out there and saying, you know, this looks good, or, you know, this is new, let's forget about it. And so there's a couple problems with that. One is that if you're using non-random locations, that data is not scientifically or statistically valid, and thus it's not legally defensible. So they're finding when they went to court and tried to justify their management decisions, they didn't have the data to do that. And then the other issue is just that even within field offices, especially across field offices, they were using different methods to try to understand land health, and those methods weren't compatible or comparable. So they understood that they needed a new framework, and based on a 2004 internal review, they found that there was really no reliable mechanism for understanding health at a landscape scale. And so they set out to develop this AIM strategy, which stands for Assessment, Inventory, and Monitoring. There's a lot of moving components with it that I can't get into all of, but a couple of the things to highlight are that it's really trying to move BLM monitoring towards using these consistent indicators like biotic integrity, soil site stability, and hydrologic function, and then also sort of mandating consistent methods used to get at those indicators. It's also integrating electronic data capture, so they send out field tablets to these monitoring crews that enter it directly into a database so that it's not on paper and just going into a filing bin. There's all sorts of quality assurance and control checks there. And then also trying to move them to a statistically valid sample design, which basically means that any point on the landscape has an equal probability of detection, which is necessary for making inferences from the site scale up to a regional or national scale. And I think just the main component of this monitoring strategy is trying to get at a more consistent monitoring framework. They're finding that even slight changes in methods used to look at something like foliar cover were yielding wildly different results that weren't comparable across time or landscapes. And that's kind of the impetus of my project too, is that they saw that the implementation of the strategy is sort of not moving at the pace that they wanted, and that is partially due to inconsistencies in how it was being communicated, and that was yielding misconceptions and sort of resulting in underwhelming support and lack of utilization of the strategy. So that led me to an internship beginning in May at the National Operations Center, developing a communication plan whose main goal was to increase awareness and enhance benefits of this monitoring strategy. And so it was developed through synthesizing existing AIM documents and reports and monitoring manuals, but also talking directly with people at the National Operations Center and program leads across the West to understand how is AIM being communicated effectively and not effectively. Couple examples of that, there's a lot in there again, but just this idea that this monitoring strategy is not meant to be used alone. It's supposed to integrate with a lot of other BLM programs and initiatives like the Landscape Approach and Adaptive Management Framework, and some more regional initiatives like Sage Grouse Initiative. And also that it's not a complete overhaul of BLM monitoring. It's taking bits and pieces from different monitoring frameworks and putting them together and trying to improve BLM monitoring. And then also just that AIM is a tool that gives managers reliable data that they can use to make better decisions, and it's applicable across diverse habitat types, multiple purposes, and multiple resources. And then from that, we proposed some strategies to effectively communicate these messages. A lot of these were built on existing strategies, including trainings. They actually go out to field offices and do these regional trainings on, well, here's the methods you should be using. One of the things that came out of that was that really these trainings should be tailored to that audience, to that field office. Instead of going there and saying, this is why you should use AIM and this is what it can do for you, try to understand from their perspective, here are the resources, concerns we have, and then say, here's how AIM can be tailored to fit your needs. Another thing was webinars. They do a lot of webinars, technical trainings on different facets of AIM, and so I proposed some webinar best practices. There was some, talking to some BLM employees, they thought that a lot of these webinars maybe weren't quite engaging enough, or that you could sort of just sit back and not have to be really engaged. So proposing tasks that the audience had to bring back. Also within the BLM, it's a decentralized agency and there's a lot of people moving around, new employees, and so it can be hard to institutionalize an initiative like this if people aren't even aware of it. So we developed an orientation package that could be sent to new employees or employees moving around with just some introductory AIM materials to try to get them to understand the importance of it. And then also in general, strategy is just web presence. They now have an AIM landscape toolbox website that kind of walks you through implementing a monitoring effort like this and analyzing data, and just increased opportunities to have a bigger web presence. And then the last part was taking these messages and strategies and understanding which ones apply directly to different audiences. So people in the Washington office that need to know, what are the benefits of this for regional and national policy decisions don't need to know what are the methods that I should be using to look at hydrologic function. Conversely, at a field office, you don't need to know necessarily how maybe it crosswalks with other initiatives, but you do need to know which methods to use and how to stratify landscape and stuff like that. And so one of the cool things that informed development of this plan was and got me out of the office, which was great, was a field training that I got to go to down in Paul's neck of the woods in Rio Grande del Norte National Monument outside Taos. And it was great to see these methods and indicators sort of implemented on the ground. And I actually got to talk with a bunch of BLM employees and some of their partners. And one of the things that came out of that was from talking to different people. There was actually in this BLM office some conflicting opinions on some of these treatments that they're trying to do to improve mule deer habitat by removing junipers. And so it was great to see people actually learning the techniques that could be used to better understand and answer these questions and hopefully reduce these conflicts. And another thing that came out of that, there's some presentations on some monitoring here and in Grand Staircase at Escalante National Monument that really kind of went through implementing an AIM project. Here's the data that you got, and here how it's informing management. And throughout this process, these kind of big questions kept coming up to me. What are the applications of the data? What methods were used, and why is AIM ideally suited? And a lot of the information that I found was really more supportive of, if you're already on board with this monitoring strategy and you want to utilize it, here's how you can get funding, here's how you can set up your sample design, here's how you can analyze the data and report on it. There wasn't a lot of great information on how is this helping the BLM and how is this leading to better management decisions. And so based on a couple of these maps that they had, where you can see that, yeah, there's a lot of AIM monitoring going around the West, but there's not a lot of information. It's just kind of a title on some of these. So I thought if we could develop some of these projects more and really give people a better sense of what kind of data they're getting and what how it's influencing decisions, that perhaps this is sort of a leverage point for getting more people to accept this. And so I kind of proposed that to my community sponsor and the AIM team, and they were very supportive of that and said that, we've been wanting to do this, we just haven't had the time. And so we set out to create some fact sheets from some of these projects. We identified 4 of the kind of marquee AIM monitoring efforts, and the way I developed the communication plan was similar to this. It was looking at resource management plans and land use plans and some AIM documents, and also talking directly with some of the people that were involved in these monitoring efforts. And we created these 4 fact sheets. I can't go into all of them, don't have time, but one in White River Field Office in Colorado, one in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, really interesting. One, a statewide assessment of BLM wadeable streams, and then this one I'm going to get into just briefly. This is a cool monitoring effort in northeastern California and northwestern Nevada. And again, highlighting multiple uses of this data. They have sage grouse there, and they were able to get some sagebrush cover information that's really important for looking at suitable habitat for sage grouse. And also during the establishment of this monitoring effort, a 340,000 acre fire ripped through there, and they were able to look at the effect of vegetation reseeding. And then also important to know that this monitoring strategy is not just applied to terrestrial habitats, but also aquatic. And they were able to get some really interesting information on departures from reference condition for a lot of aquatic indicators. And so that was a big success of the project. I talked to a lot of people that were really supportive of it and really wanted to see this happen. We got some good feedback on that, and same with the communication plan. And they were both very iterative processes of talking directly with people that were involved in this and trying to understand why AIM wasn't being utilized maybe as much as it was and how we could effectively communicate that. And then another great success was just personal development for myself, of understanding much deeper BLM monitoring requirements and methods used to get at that, and also understanding and navigating changes in an institution like the BLM, and also just networking and a better sense of managing at a landscape scale. Unfortunately, the original intent of the fact sheets was to create something like this, an online interactive map that you could click on. But based on sort of the timing of this project, they're really ramping up implementation for 2016 and trying to get a lot of people to use this strategy. And so these fact sheets needed a very thorough review process. There's a lot of people that work on the strategy and they're very proud of it and want to make sure that what's being conveyed is accurate and relevant. And so time for a really thorough review process wasn't going to happen this spring, so that's kind of been shelved for the summer. Same with the communication plan. So this summer we're all going to sit down, hopefully, and be able to look at the stuff and kind of tweak it and then be able to get it up on the website. And then based on that, a few lessons learned. One is that, especially with an independent agency, that timing is really everything. Everybody wears multiple hats and has a lot to do. And so finding these windows where you can really get everybody to the table and work on it is difficult, but necessary. And then also just developing relationships. I found that the feedback I was receiving came a lot from people that I had talked to directly beforehand, before I sent these materials out. I had a personal relationship with them and I wanted to see this project go forward. And then also one of the barriers, I think a lot of these projects that we're going to hear this week, we're able to do sort of like send out surveys and really get people's opinions on why or why not they supported something. And that was sort of not going to happen with this project. They didn't really want me, for good reason, just cold calling people and asking, why aren't you using this strategy? Come on. Or even sending out a survey to get, so a lot of the people I talked to were sort of proponents of this monitoring strategy. And they still had, they all had skin in the game and all had real valid concerns with how it was being communicated or how it applied to the BLM wide. So I did get some good feedback, but it's maybe somewhat slightly biased. And so, 2 minutes on. To wrap up, future of this project, again, is that this summer we're going to hopefully have a more thorough review. And the idea was, especially with the fact sheets, was to create a template that can be used. They want, in general, they want people that are doing this monitoring to do more reporting on it. And so we're hoping that maybe when you complete maybe a large monitoring effort like this, that you would have this template to create a fact sheet and start getting them up on a website and kind of create a critical mass of understanding of the benefits of AIM and where it's occurring. And also, personal future, this project does not end because I will be continuing my work with the BLM in this beautiful progressive town in Wyoming. A little slice of heaven called Rollins. I'm going to be a natural resource specialist and involved in a lot of the planning and authorizing and reporting on human uses and resource condition. And I'm going to take all these lessons learned and networks that I've created and a deeper eye for understanding management at a landscape scale, and a deeper understanding of the interaction between these national policies, of which there's a lot. They get a lot of internal memorandum that tell them how to manage something, and the interaction between that and boots on the ground management is something that I've developed a much deeper understanding of. And with that, here are a few references and resources, and a few quick thanks to the entire AIM team at the National Operations Center and all the people that really helped and supported me along the way. And MEM faculty, especially my advisor, Corey Knapp, who's been so supportive of everything. And then also a shout out to my Morrison support squad in the back. Thank you for everything, friends and family. And my wife. Without her, I would be living in squalor and poverty and hunger probably. Thank you for sticking with me these 2 years and following me around. And thank you. Oh.
How much of your data is monitoring is field-based, and how much is digital satellite-type imagery?
That's a good question. So one of the other components of the AIM strategy is integration with remote sensing, and that's really to try to make this monitoring more efficient, because it is a lot of monitoring. It's maybe more monitoring than people are used to, and so they're trying to integrate remote sensing and get a better, more of a bird's eye view of sort of land health and resource condition and changes. And so I think some of these images that you had seen maybe were mostly, I think a lot of it, especially some of these pilot projects, were either mostly on the ground monitoring, but also some of the pilot projects really incorporated remote sensing to try to get sort of a better understanding of how you can integrate the two. So especially there's a project in the National Petroleum Reserve with a big remote sensing component, because it's such a large landscape, and trying to sort of combine those two. So it's more heavy towards on the ground right now, at least, but moving in the direction of remote sensing. Andres?
So are there any efforts right now to somehow coordinate how the BLM does their monitoring with Forest Service and Park Service? Because often those lands are adjacent to each other, have the same issues.
For sure.
How's that going to work together?
Man, that's beyond the scope of the project. But a great question, and definitely one that I was thinking of during this project. I think, at least for now, the BLM is really focused on just getting them, the BLM, to try to get the BLM to use this. So, but I think a lot of the methods and indicators work across scales, of course. And you can supplement a lot of these indicators with additional indicators that could be used in forested ecosystems. And so I think, that's a very good question, something that they're aware of. But for now, it's sort of just trying to get BLM to do it, which is hard enough. Yeah.
What communication techniques did you use? It seems like a lot of BLM personnel are always being told how to manage lands this way or that way, and they seem to be somewhat of the experts on parcels of lands. What communication tools have helped kind of explain the importance of AIM without seeming like this time you have to use this?
Right. I think part of that is just getting at listening first and understanding, what are their monitoring requirements and how have they done it, and then saying, not that this is going to replace that, but a lot of that is being built into this. Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I guess it was difficult to really get at that again, because I wasn't necessarily talking directly with a lot of field office people, and they have seriously valid concerns, because this is, in a lot of cases, more monitoring, and money and funding and time to do this is difficult. But I think remaining positive and just trying to expose the benefits of it, that there's a lot of money is being spent on litigation or on remonitoring because the data is invalid. So, and one of the things they do is really try to help people with funding and resource and time. And so providing these materials, I guess, and support is a big part of what the National Operations Center does. So I guess trying to just steer the conversation away from, how much it costs and how long it takes to, here's really, here's the data that you can get and here's what you can do with it. Corey?
And I think it totally makes sense that you were working with kind of the willing adopters, the people who had already taken it on. But when you were at the Society for Range Management conference and had your poster up, what did you hear from the skeptics, the folks that aren't adopting it, and did it change any of the ways that you were thinking about the project?
Well, I think kind of unfortunately with that was that was one of the big hopes, was to go down there and really get that sense. And the BLM had travel restrictions at that time, and only maybe 5 or 10 BLM employees were even able to make it there. So again, but there was a few people that came up that really kind of wanted to know more of the nuts and bolts of, what methods you can use. Can I monitor oil and gas reclamation across a large transect or something? So I'd say I was hoping to get at that more there too, but wasn't able to. Yes?
Probably another out of scope question, but When in process of doing this, did you get a sense of how the BLM compares to Forest Service, Park Service, Fish and Wildlife with regard to how integrated or how far along they are with integrating and standardizing measurement techniques?
Yeah, I think that that was one of the things I wanted to get out of it, and that was talking to BLM employees. A lot of them had worked with the Forest Service and just trying to understand the culture of it and how difficult it was to move something forward. And I don't want to share too many of those conversations because there is definitely strong opinions on how different agencies are doing things differently. But all of it is, I think, understanding that it's difficult, that you have this sort of national Washington group that's proposing all these initiatives that require more funding that they're not getting. And so kind of a lot of questioning, and I think across all agencies, of how to integrate BLM. You know, there's a lot of divisions. I think even what I found was that there's divisions between field office and the National Operations Center in the Washington office. And a lot of them, I think, have only worked maybe in one of those divisions, and so it's hard to understand why the Washington office is sending you all this stuff all the time that you don't have the resources for. And it's hard to understand from the National Operations Center why a field office is not implementing this stuff that's obviously useful for them. And so that's another thing I think that I've learned to at least be aware of and take with me wherever I end up. That's it.